Good morning and welcome to Lntv News Live, 30 minutes of news from Liberia and elsewhere. I'm Hassan Kiawu, presenting on today, Wednesday, November 25, 2020. In our top stories, the government of Liberia has released the autopsy report on the deaths of 4 Liberians. Former Liberia's Foreign Minister Augustin Gafuan gets a new post at the African Development Bank for Uganda. United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, donates consignment of modern laptops to the National Elections Commission. And of the home front, the Sierra Leone's anti-corruption is investigating the country's former president, Ernest Bai Koroma, over corruption charges. Also coming up is a commentary titled Liberia's 2020 Special Senatorial Election, a national referendum, a litmus test for the country's emerging democracy. We'll be right back. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, has donated 19 modern laptops to the National Elections Commission, NEC. The laptops, according to a release, will later be presented to the 19 senior elections magistrates of the Commission across Liberia. The Chief Technical Advisor to the UNDP Electoral Support Office in Liberia, Lenka Homokova, put the total cost of the laptops at over $42,000 United States dollars. Presenting the items, Madam Homokova said the laptops were made possible through the German government as part of its long-term capacity building effort to the NEC. Receiving the laptops, NEC Chairperson David Brown Lansana described the gesture as timely, especially as the Commission moves towards the December 8 elections. Former Liberia's Foreign Minister Augustin Gafuan has been appointed country manager designate to the African Development Bank for Uganda. An economist, accountant, and diplomat, Mr. Gafuan is joining the bank with many years of experience in public sector management after leadership roles in the banking sector. The former Liberian Foreign Minister was among 7 new country managers announced by the African Development Bank on Monday. Prior to his appointment, Mr. Gafuan also served as Liberia's governor and board of governors of the African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank from 2008 to 2012. Other member countries with new country managers are Central African Republic, Ghana, Madagascar, Mali, Sierra Leone, and Togo. The government of Liberia has finally released investigative findings into the mysterious deaths of 4 Liberians who died in Monrovia and Painesville, respectively, in October 2020. The autopsy reports conducted on Albert Peters, Gabriel Lamar, Emmanuel Nyenswa, and George Fambutu were released Tuesday at a special edition of the MICAD press briefing. Releasing the findings of Albert Peters and Gabriel Lamar, who were discovered dead in a vehicle on Broad Street on October 2nd, Justice Minister Councillor Musa Dean attributed the death to carbon monoxide poisoning and fumes from defective car exhaust fumes.
There is no fracture or dislocation, no metallic density or foreign body. The following samples were extracted for full toxicology: alcohol, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbon, common poison, drugs, heavy metals, and the findings derived from as follows. Alcohol not detected. Carbon monoxide positive. Hydrocarbon positive. Common poison drug not detected. Castro content common poison drug not detected. Kidney heavy metals not detected. The above findings are applicable to Gifty E. Lama and Albert Peters, except for acidic drug detected in the liver and castrate content of gifted A. Lamon, which I attributed to a prescription drug. Cause of death. A. Carbon monoxide poisoning exacerbated by gasoline hydrocarbon fumes. B. Fumes from defective car exhaust system, defect in the flow of the car. Conclusion by the pathologist, quote, in our professional and expert opinions, based on the available evidence, the manner of death is unnatural, in parentheses, accidental, unquote.
The Justice Minister, quoting the autopsy report, said the death of Internal Audit Agency boss Emmanuel Nyenswa is as a result of a fall, but called for further investigation.
According to medical records from the John F. Kennedy Medical Center, he started gasping for air at 3:14 a.m. and following 20 minutes of unsuccessful attempts to resuscitate him, he ceased breathing and was declared clinically dead at 4:00 a.m. on October 10, 2020. Again, consistent with Volume 1, Title 2, Chapter 7 of our Criminal Procedure Law, the coroner of Mosorado County, having declared the death suspicious, the Ministry of Justice ordered that post-mortem examination autopsy be performed on the release. Relevant autopsy findings: massive injuries to the head, chest, and abdomen. No metallic density foreign body found. Cause of death: massive hemorrhage, multiple wound and soft tissue injuries, and blunt injuries consistent with fall from height. Conclusion by the pathologist, quote, in our professional and expert opinion, the manner of death is unnatural. Further classification of this unnatural death as accidental, homicidal, or suicidal will require further police detective investigations, unquote.
On the death of George Fambutu, another employee of the LRA, the Justice Minister said he died from a road accident.
Lost control of his vehicle, struck a pedestrian, and landed in the garage of Dr. Joseph T.K. Workers' private residence, about 200 feet from the road. He sustained injuries and was rushed to John F. Kennedy Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Consistent with Volume 1, Title 2, Chapter 7 of our Civil Procedure Law, the coroner of Mosorado County, having declared the death suspicious, the Ministry of Justice ordered that post-mortem examination and autopsy be performed on the release. Relevant autopsy findings: injuries to the head, chest, and abdomen. No metallic density foreign body. Cause of death: right frontal cerebral contusion and disruption of brain with hemorrhages. Right frontal complex depressed comminuted fracture. Vehicle in head-on collision and side impact with house and road traffic accident. Conclusion by the pathologist, quote, it is our professional and expert opinion the manner of death is unnatural. In parentheses, accidental, unquote.
Liberia's Justice Minister, Councillor Musa Dean. The Executive Director of the National Disaster Management Agency has made a passionate plea to the public to assist the agency in catering to the needs of disaster victims in the country. Mr. Henry Williams said the public support to the agency will buttress government's efforts in addressing the plight of disaster victims. He spoke in an ELTV News Tuesday in Painesville.
Because sometimes you get into an area, like if you go there like this Monday and you see a house standing by the beach side, maybe if you go there 2 weeks, you will not see that house again. So it is really a serious problem. And this is why we are, let's say, calling on the public. The government have done a lot and is doing a whole lot. Let the public too come in to aid. Let's say disasters that are naturally unlinked, okay? Like flood victims, flash flood victims, windstorm victims, erosion victims. The president have done a lot to provide the initial amount, because you know, when things happen, they say, what is the government doing? Or what has the government done? But if you look at what the government have done now or is doing, you should look at that as a serious example and follow and try to contribute. So I will urge the public to help the government, complement our effort. As we are fighting COVID, we are fighting fire victims, we are also fighting for flood victims, windstorm victims. So now is we are looking at multiple disasters, not only one disaster, but we are looking at multiple disasters.
Mr. Henry O. Williams, he is the Executive Director of the National Disaster Management Agency. A reminder that you are watching Lntv News Live, 30 minutes of news from Liberia and elsewhere, and I'm your presenter, Hassan Kiawu. Let's recap our top stories. The government of Liberia releases the autopsy report on the deaths of 4 Liberians. Former Liberian Foreign Minister Augustine P. Gaffron gets a new post at the African Development Bank for Uganda. United Nations Development Programme UNDP donates consignment of modern laptops to the National Elections Commission. And of the home front, Sierra Leone's anti-corruption body is investigating the country's former leader, Ernest Bai Koroma, over corruption charges. And also coming up is a commentary titled Liberia's 2020 Special Senatorial Election and National Referendum, a litmus test for the country's emerging democracy. We'll be right back. Margibi County senatorial candidate Iva Jones has underscored the crucial role of reconciliation to the overall development of the country. The CDC senatorial hopeful believes he is rightly positioned to unite the people and utilize the country's resources for the benefit of its citizens. He spoke in an ELBC interview recently.
Because if people are not reconciled, they will not come on the table to discuss developmental ideas. And the second item speaks about equal opportunity. If people are disenchanted, the disenchantment will come about as a result of not having equal opportunity. But when the opportunity is given to the people freely, in which there are requirements, and the requirement is opportune and open to all, then you see them not being disenchanted. You see our people coming out to produce, to partake, and ensure that the development of not only the district this town, but the county is realized. Today, those things, or those developments are mentioned, that the the Chavia Public School, like the district office, it has been a success today as a result of the inclusion of those people in the process. Today we have a district council. Amount remitted to the district council is being used by the district council to carry on those projects. So you will have seen the people disenchanted if they were not involved in the process. But by bringing them on the table, vote of your political affiliation, vote of your tribal affiliation, or so forth, we believe we all are Margibians, and we should sit across the table to discuss the developmental drive of Margibi. That alone is a reconciliation. And on that format, we are about to reconcile Margibi and go beyond.
Margibi County Senatorial hopeful Ava Jones. A plea has been sounded for all Liberians to abide by the Supreme Court's mandate for the National Elections Commission to ensure all 8 propositions are on the ballot for the pending referendum. The comment was contained in a special commentary on the senatorial elections slated for December 8, 2020. Veteran broadcaster Aaron Colley authored and read the commentary as part of LBS homecoming program now going on at the state broadcaster.
Liberia's post-war recovery gets to the test again with its pending special senatorial elections. Slated for Tuesday, December 8, 2020, the stakes are already very high. Liberia's quest to prove to the world that its emerging democracy has been solidified will be on full display in the aftermath of the December 8th senatorial elections. A day prior to that, Ghana, reputed for being one of Africa's most vibrant democratically stable countries, will be holding its presidential elections. Though only the second time in post-war Liberia that the senatorial elections have been held aside from previous general elections that have included both presidential and legislative races, the 2020 version is more than a race within 118 candidates hope to occupy 15 senatorial seats. Additionally, 2 by-elections are also on the table for representative districts in Sino and Monserrado counties respectively. Aside from its similar competitive nature, it is above all a major litmus test for the country's ability to sustain itself democratically since the former end of the UNMIL peacekeeping venture 2 years ago. Our country, Liberia, has the chance to prove to the world that it can use the December 8th senatorial elections to justify that it is indeed on the right path of becoming one of Africa's most stable and sustained democracies, especially as it will be doing so in the absence of UNMIL for the first time. Recall that Liberia has had to rely on her international partners, led by ECOWAS and the United Nations, directly supervising all its 3 post-war presidential and senatorial elections. The 1997 special elections had the United Nations mission and ECOWAS directly involved. So were the 2005 and 2011 elections respectively, as well as the 2014 senatorial elections under strict supervision of UNMIL. Then came the 2017 elections that ushered in Liberia's first democratic transition in 7 decades from one constitutionally elected President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to another Ambassador George Manneh Weah. That was UNMIL's last success story before rolling out in late March of 2018. Well, for 2020, slated for exactly 2 weeks from today, the world watches as Liberia carries its own burden of conducting free, fair, and transparent senatorial elections that will signal how the 2023 presidential and legislative elections will fare. The December 8th election comes on the heels of major concerns in a highly conflicted region where there have been electoral crises in 2 of Liberia's neighbors, Guinea and La Côte d'Ivoire. The matter of fact is that 2020 has been an electioneering year on the African continent, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. And of special attention is that the majority of these 2020 elections are being held in countries either confronting or emerging from conflict. That list includes Burkina Faso, Burundi, the Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Niger, Somalia, and our own Liberia. And the world switches its attention to the Liberian December 8th process, which will be the last of 8 legislative parliamentary elections for this year in Africa. Though ours will be legislative elections, it's no secret that the build-up to the holding of these have been tense, carrying with them the momentum resembling that of a presidential race. Of vital importance too on December 8th is the chance for Liberians to make major changes to the 1986 National Constitution through national referendum. Let all stakeholders abide by the Supreme Court's mandate for the National Elections Commission (NEC) to ensure that all 8 propositions mentioned in the joint resolution of the legislature that sanctioned the need for a referendum appeared on the ballot paper. No one should use the dangerous propaganda of a third-term push to stop or circumvent the quest for tenure reduction and other viable constitutional reform measures in Liberia, neither the issue of sufficient public education awareness, but work clearly in line with the legislative resolution outlining all propositions and taking into account all concerns. And in the end, Liberia wins. We must therefore, as Liberians, regardless of being the ruling party, in the opposition bloc, or having no party affiliation at all, ensure that we place our country first in these elections and national referendum. And the reason is simple. It is a real test not only to our thriving democracy, but also our chance to convince the world that we can exclusively manage such tasks ourselves, since the asset of Omil, howbeit Herculean the tax. This is because a bigger one lies ahead in 3 years' time, for the 2020 electoral process is a precursor to the 2023 gigantic one.
Aaron Colley there with that special commentary. Away from home, polls have closed in Burkina Faso's presidential elections. According to the BBC, some poll places were closed in parts and north and east of Burkina Faso because of fears of jihadist violence. President Roch Kabore is seeking a second 5-year term with 13 opposition candidates challenging him. At least 400,000 would-be voters were unable to register because of security concerns. Brutal attacks have forced more than 1 million civilians from their homes in the past 2 years alone. Campaigning was halted for 48 hours last week following a deadly ambush on soldiers in the north of the country. An Ethiopian government said it will not talk with leaders of the northern Tigray region to end the conflict there. The BBC says that African leaders have urged the government to meet Tigrayan leaders. The conflict has reportedly killed thousands or hundreds and displaced thousands in recent weeks. The United Nations has warned it will trigger a humanitarian crisis. On Friday, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as the African Union chairperson, announced the appointment of 3 former presidents to lead talks to end the conflict there. But Ethiopia has rejected the offer, seeing its operation as an internal law enforcement mission. Government forces seized the key towns last week and said they are preparing for an assault on Tigray's capital, Mekelle. The TPLF has vowed to defend the mountainous region. Its fighters, drawn mostly from a paramilitary unit and a well-drilled local militia, are thought to be about 225,000. Whether we end this Lntv Live, but before we go, let's remind you of our top stories. The government of Liberia releases the autopsy report of the deaths of 4 Liberians. Former Liberian Foreign Minister Augustine Payne Gaffron gets a new post at the African Development Bank for Uganda. The United Nations Development Programme UNDP donates a consignment of modern laptops to the National Elections Commission. And off the home front, Sierra Leone's anti-corruption body is investigating the country's former president Ernest Bai Koroma over corruption charges. And also you heard a commentary titled Liberia's 2020 Special Senatorial Election and National Referendum, a litmus case for the country's emerging democracy. Well, that's how we come to the end of this edition of Lntv News Live. Thanks for viewing, and thanks also to all of our entire news team for the news. Join us again for an update at 12 o'clock, at 2 and 4 p.m. Or better still, you can rejoin us tonight for another edition of LNTV News Live at 8 o'clock this evening. And please, keep your dials set right to LNTV, because we have a whole lot in stock for you. This week is our Homecoming 2020. And tonight, you'll be watching Auntie Davi's Katie's Corner at 7 o'clock this evening, right before the LNTV News Live. On behalf of the rest of the team, I'm Hassan Kiawu, presenter. Have a nice day, and please stay tuned to LNTV.
Moving Liberia forward, improving service delivery and public investment. EU Budget Support Program. Liberia is a developing country that holds potential. This nation of about 4.2 million people is rebuilding itself after the end of the Civil War in 2003 and the Ebola epidemic outbreak. The country is blessed with resources like iron ore, gold, diamonds, natural rubber, vast forests, and agricultural lands. Liberia has made progress when it comes to democracy and development. However, there are challenges to finance key projects and service delivery in the entire country through the national budget. The European Union is working with Liberia to fill this gap through budget support. The EU asks the Liberian government to take certain positive steps before it gives any budget support. These steps are called the general and specific conditions. These steps are eventually beneficial to both parties, especially Liberia, like carrying out the National Development Plan, measures to improve the economy, improvement of public institutions to ensure the efficient use of public funds, and transparency of the budget process. The EU is in close dialogue with the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, the Liberia Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, and the Public Procurement and Concession Commission to monitor progress under specific conditions. The conditions for release of these funds are: raise money locally from forestry, make doing business across the borders easier, use the national budget to deliver quality services. Deliver services, for example, birth certificates, marriage certificates, deed registration, vehicle registration in counties for citizens to benefit. Control and prevent corruption when buying goods and contracting services. And check that public officials have correctly declared their assets. European Union allocated 27 million euros as part of the second EU budget support to the government of Liberia from 2018 to 2020. 24 million euros is for budget support, while the remaining 3 million euros is dedicated to providing complementary technical assistance. The European Union carefully monitors progress during the lifetime of the budget support contract. The government only receives the committed funds if the conditions are met. The European Union has so far released 18 million euros. The remaining 6 million is to support the government to better deal with the health and economic challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Once the funds are in the bank account of the Liberian government, the government is free to use the money as it deems fit in line with the national budget. It can thus improve its economy and reduce the hardships of Liberians. The legislature, external auditors, and citizens of Liberia are to oversee that the money is put to good use.